Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, and today we are joined by Hannah Kaner, the mighty author of Godkiller.
Hello.
So this is the day after your launch.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you feeling today?
Definitely not still drunk.
Good. That's where we need to be. So Godkiller, which is, we just have to kind of, I think, first mention how absolutely stunning the edition is, and for everyone at home who's like pre-ordered signed editions, it's just beautiful. So you had some involvement in the cover design?
Some, yeah. Not a large amount, because as soon as my editor said, like, what do you think of this artist? Like, would they be good for the cover? I said, yes, please. Pick
me.
Tom's work is always so, it's beautiful, it's meticulous, it's got a lovely kind of Celtic or Gaelic edge, and it just kind of suits the vibe of the book. I love that one of the characters is on the cover, and I love that it plays with a lot of the themes that are in the book as well.
Yeah, the colourway as well, and I did notice, talk about this the other day, that Mark Lawrence's new book has got the same cover artist. So
yes, like, oh, that's so good. Yeah,
yes, that is another absolute stunning cover. So for you, kind of playing with that kind of classic quest kind of story in Godkiller, and kind of that grumpy, jaded central character, did kind of Kissen come to you like fully formed, or was it the world that came first?
It was Kissen. Kissen kind of kicked her way into my head in like 2016, so like 7 years ago, and it was just this character who was big and bold and angry and like full of love, and and who killed the gods was the concept behind it, and I've not been able to get rid of her ever since, and so the story formed itself around, or I formed the story around this character, and the world as well, like the characters in the world kind of grew together because they both are formed by and form their environment. So it was the character first, and the world, and the other characters, and then the core concept of the quest. I really wanted Kissen to go on a journey that challenged her, both psychologically and physically. And I love that quest narrative, like the Hobbit or Gawain and the Green Knight, kind of there and back again. So it was just brilliantly fun to play with.
Good. And it kind of reminds me, I don't know if you read last year Nettle and Bone, the tea kingfisher.
But I've heard of it.
Oh, you totally should.
Yeah,
it's just, there's something about the like misfit, like rabble of people that somehow come together and,
absolutely,
you know, have like some kind of joint quest.
They've got a goal in mind,
yes.
But they kind of, because they have sort of happened together, they don't really necessarily know each other that well, or if they do, they're kind of all very different. And then how do they move forward as a team and not fall apart?
Yes,
so much fun every time. I love it.
And would you say any of the characters are either kind of based on you or anyone you know?
No, I wouldn't say that.
If there's a Kissen walking around,
I know, like, fall over backwards. No, I think they kind of came from the story itself. I mean, Elo took a while to form. I knew I wanted to kind of have a knight. I knew I wanted him to be an ex-knight who was kind of sort of lost his way, and sort of, I guess, another play on that wandering hero trope. But I also wanted him to like have a purpose, and I was like, what does a knight do after they stop being a knight? And then I was on a trip in Scotland to Dunoon with a group of my mates, and one of my friends, Yemi, spent like 3 days baking like 6 loaves of focaccia. There was only 7 people there, and it was just like, they were huge, and he put so much love into it, and like the way that kind of all the dough like comes together. This was maybe 2019, and so I was like, that works really well for this character. It's like, this is what he would do, this is how he would express his love and find his calm. and I thought it was a really important part of him.
Yeah.
So I sort of nicked that from that trip and put it into Elo, but that was it.
I mean, the aspect of food as well is obviously it's a huge thing in here, and just when we interviewed Sarah for Final Strive last year, it was obviously a huge thing in her book as well.
Yes.
That you kind of, I think we're starting to learn now if we're reading kind of any kind of the new upcoming epic fantasy books that we need to have like snacks.
Yeah.
Just ready to go. So was that kind of a conscious decision to kind of, were you like hungry when you were writing?
I mean, I'm always hungry.
Well,
and I am happiest when I'm eating. It was, I mean, I do think kind of in some like really great old fantasy, food does form like kind of the belly of the book. It kind of gives it purpose and kind of the world a bit of weight. And that was kind of one of the things I was thinking about with Godkiller, because this is a country that's full of gods, and how do gods form from like myths and storytelling and stories from trade. And so I was thinking about kind of the Mediterranean and the trade sea, and like kind of how stories and gods were passed from land to land, and also in the passing of stories you get the passage of food and trade of food and spices. So I was thinking kind of like a world that had so many gods must be a world with a lot of different countries who are all kind of interacting a lot. And so one of the ideas behind it was, okay, let's bring in food from like different countries in this place. How would those foods be reinterpreted? How would a baker kind of remind himself of home? And so a lot of the foods are kind of either thinking about things I would cook myself, or they were a little bit made up, and I was thinking about what foodstuffs would be available and what would be less available. And that was a lot of fun, because I do think, I mean, in our world, like the way that we eat and is also where we share stories, and it's kind of also where we gather, and aspects of the Mediterranean have such a huge food culture, particularly kind of southern Spain and southern Italy, and their kind of connections with northern Africa, and Arabic cultures have kind of infused the foods there as well, and that's kind of a brilliant combination of things.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And did you kind of get the chance to kind of, I suppose, sign off some travel trips? Just say, oh, I'm doing some research.
No, I didn't do that.
Spain.
Not yet, though. Yeah,
Soon.
it would be tempting. Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, I would love to eat my way around the world, so that's I could do that for research purposes.
Yes, definitely. It's got to be done. So this, as obviously quite often with epic fantasy, they tend to be kind of doorstops, and we've all kind of read our way through some doorstops in our times. But this is definitely kind of a shorter, kind of punchier debut. Again, was this something that you kind of sought out to do? Was it always kind of going to be, because it does pack a punch for like 300 pages, which is fantastic. Was it something that you'd like, I'm going to do like a couple of punchier, shorter books that really kind of grab people straight away?
It wasn't really intentional. I mean, I've written kind of drafts of other books before that are much, much longer, but I think kind of I knew where the direction the story was going, and I knew I wanted to end where it does, but I'm not gonna spoil it. But that it was essentially, it's a quest narrative, it's a journey, so when they get there, the journey's over. And there were a few places I sort of thought about threading through, but yeah, when the sort of narrative came to an end, it was around just over 100,000 words, and I wanted to keep it tight, because you do potentially have the potential for a lot of arguing around campfires, of which there is a little, and of which there was a lot more in earlier drafts, but it just wanted to kind of keep the pace going, I guess, alongside the quest.
And there's obviously within Godkiller, and obviously the rest of the series to come, there's such just an amazing representation of different people from different worlds, a representation of kind of health issues and disabilities. So how important was that to obviously be part of these books?
So I didn't start writing Kissen with the intention of I'm going to write a disabled character into this book, but I was thinking about the lore of the gods and kind of what is important to them in terms of sacrifice, and sacrifice is something you value is very, very good. Something of flesh and blood is even better, and something kind of that is sacrificed unwillingly is like kind of the best. But so I knew that she had to gain a gift that's like survive the night. 2 gifts in the first part of the book, and one of them is through her father's life, and the other one was with something that was needed to be sacrificed from her. So I thought kind of, it could be an eye or a hand, and I did sort of decide that her leg would be a good sacrifice, and also a reason that she was put in this like kind of dangerous situation. And so having thought about that and that kind of formation of her character, it became clear to me that I was going to be writing a disabled character, and that it was my responsibility to do it very well. There's a lot of brilliant writers who have varying forms of disabilities, and readers who find these tropes in books frustrating when it's like representation of ability and disability come along. So I did a lot of research into what tropes were frustrating, also how to represent sort of a prosthesis and Kissen as a character, and then worked with authenticity editors to try and make it accurate within the realms of fantasy, and joyful, and this character who is disabled but completely whole, doesn't need to be fixed, is completely comfortable with who she is. So it's important to, if you're going to write representation, to really do the work and do the research and make sure it's kind of is done well, and hopefully anyone who's reading it will find that, though I welcome critiques if I've not done it well enough. And with mental health as well, I think that's just kind of, we all are suffering human beings, and when you go through awful things in your experience as a character, that does have to have an impact, and that kind of became an integral part of the character and their story and what they go through, and again, research, making sure I'm not representing it poorly, and making sure it's done respectfully, and yeah, it felt like an honour to be writing, and I hopefully have done justice.
I think as well, to kind of what really kind of backs all that up is the kind of found family motif, that you never feel as if anyone has been, I don't know, marginalised in any way, because they have these fantastic friendships, and like Kissen obviously has a family who love her and a found family, so they still feel very kind of real, and I never once thought that she'd lose in a fight, so like she's got this. I think one of Kissen's kind of like heartfelt tenets is like, no one should have to face the world alone, which she did when she was younger, and has found a community who love her. And I think that's also something that does come up when you read about representation of disability and queerness and LGBT representation in fiction, is often those characters are isolated, they don't have community, they're either the butt of a joke, or they're kind of hiding themselves, and that's just not who Kissen is. And that was sort of important, that she didn't face the world alone, she had people who knew her. And thinking about my friends who are disabled, like they do seek out and find their communities, people who understand them completely, and that is just a really wonderful thing, and that felt really important to keep in the book. And I think quite often now, I think touched on it in previous interviews that we've done for FPTV with other authors, is that I think it was harder to find your kind of clique in the 70s, 80s and stuff, where I think a lot of people kind of felt alone if they were kind of dealing with kind of coming out, or dealing with even kind of anything on the kind of the geek spectrum was not cool. So, absolutely. I think finding your tribe is like so important. I mean, when I was reading fantasy very young, I did find that as a woman and as a queer woman,
I never found something that really felt like me. Angry enough or fighty enough or annoying enough to kind of to really kind of feel like a character that represents myself. So when I started writing, I was like, well, I'm gonna write it, it's gonna be really great. And that was kind of a wonderful thing to be able to do. But now I feel like I'm writing into a pantheon of brilliant books, and huge communities that found each other through social media or through reading or through wonderful things like Forbidden Planet. Of kind of the world has changed over even my lifetime, and it's something that we should really fight to protect.
It was, I think, definitely kind of growing up, it was in the minority to ever kind of see yourself in any way in a book, whether it was as simple as even just having a female character who wasn't, I don't know, either a butt of a joke or some kind of, you know, sex object or something within that book. So I think things like a lot of the Tamora Pierce, things like Sabriel and stuff, were some of the first things that were just like, oh my god,
this is starting to get there. And like, well, I mean, that's just like kind of representation of me as a kind of a white woman in the UK. Representation and writers of colour are really sort of changing the face of fantasy and what it means to be represented and what is to have their stories told, which is just like, it's just brilliant. Like the world is just opening up in fantasy. Well, okay, opening up. They're kicking down the doors, and I love it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're taking what's theirs.
Yes, exactly.
Definitely. So for a little bit of fun. So if it was Kissen's date night, where is she going, and who would her like ideal date be with? Anyone from another book, film, game?
Ooh, delightful. Kissen's date would probably be at a nice kind of quiet pub by the fire, somewhere that she can get a bit cosy. I think her ideal date. She quite likes kind of quite femme women, and so at the beginning of the book she kind of almost gets together with a woman in a bar called Rosalie, but unfortunately that dalliance is cut short. I think she'd quite fancy Luca from The Faithless. You know, the princess type. Or a Noor in The Final Strife.
Yes.
Yeah, someone who's kind of like well put together.
Yes.
And smart, so she can kind of like admire them talking.
Yes. And maybe kind of be their protector in a way.
Oh yeah.
Well. Like they can handle themselves, but
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, she'd like to be the muscle.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So the kind of obviously a rich kind of interest in mythology and folklore, and the kind of, I suppose, the pettiness of the gods. So where did kind of the idea for that come from, and the kind of the research?
I mean, I think a lot of fantasy writers and readers have had an interest in like mythology as well, and that's often where some of our sort of original quest or tragic narratives come from. And I always love kind of in Celtic lore or Greek mythology the kind of capriciousness of the gods, of these powerful beings who are, can I swear?
Yeah.
Who are massive dicks, and sort of run around, you know, being assholes, but are so powerful. There's so little like kind of that humans can do about it. So there was sort of an element that I wanted to play into it, of kind of gods are not necessarily, well, they're ambivalent. They can do good, they can do bad, and I think that's kind of a really interesting thing, is that, and there is a part in the book where I say, people make gods, like we create them out of ourselves, and we create those stories, and that's kind of how they come into existence. But also gods like kind of need people, and so there's kind of a sort of symbiotic relationship there, and that's really interesting. I think that kind of comes up across in a lot of different mythologies, and like Terry Pratchett as well plays with this idea of kind of who gods are and what kind of gives them power. Research wise, I mean, there are kind of some elements of Celtic gods that kind of scatter through, but I wanted to make sure it was its own pantheon. And there's a god character in it who is a god of white lies, and that form that he takes is from the Wolpertinger, which is in German folklore and mythology, which is a hare with wings and horns. But it's also kind of like a haggis in Scottish folklore. It's kind of a story you tell children of like, you go up the hills, there's one leg shorter than the other, and it runs really fast, and you've got to catch it by going the other way. You can trick people into looking for them, and that's kind of similar for a Wolpertinger. It's sort of like it's a trick you tell newcomers or get people to believe in, and that's kind of really delightful.
Is that what you do when people visit Edinburgh? You should go outside and look for...
No comment. I have convinced more than one person that haggis exists.
It is something absolutely fascinating with Godkiller, the idea that people can bring those gods back as well with their kind of belief and maybe wishes and stuff. So yeah, it's just such a good book. Such a book. The same before, obviously this year is we're 3 weeks in and already it's just like killing it. So
killing it. But it was so much fun to write and to play with this world, and I can't wait to keep on writing it and sort of take those ideas a bit further, which is sort of going to be fun but challenging, and like working with the editorial team on it as well to make sure it's doing its job. Yes, has been really fun, and the support from reviewers and readers and writers and booksellers has just blown my mind and made me cry more than once. So I'm just so grateful for the support.
Oh, I mean, just incredible books. In fact, when I first got sent it, so my boyfriend was around my house and I received this, and I also received the new Era the Rocker, and I was just like, oh, I'm super excited for both of these. He put them in his bag, went back to Bristol with them, and then I turned around the next day like, oh, I'm going to start reading
God damn it!
But I put and for like half a day I was just like, maybe I put it somewhere else. And I was just like looking around the house, and then he sent me a photo of him just going bring that back.
Got it.
God damn it. So to finish the interview for today, so name one of your kind of favourite underrated books that you want to recommend to people out there, kind of something that doesn't get the
hype it deserves.
Exactly.
I've mentioned this before and I'll mention it again, is Pantomime, Shadow Play and Masquerade by Elle Lam. They came out in I think 2014, so kind of at a point where there wasn't quite so much queer representation in books, and that has like changed massively over the last several years. But it's a queer, trans, intersex main character, sort of going through shenanigans in this beautifully crafted magical world, and I just don't see it talked about or mentioned in those kind of pioneering books kind of spaces, and I just think they're truly beautiful. And they're YA, so I kind of like wish more kids could read them and see themselves in the story.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I can't remember if you said before or not, do you game at all? Because there seems to be like a...
I don't anymore, but I did when I was a kid.
And when you had the time.
That's not through lack of desire, it's through lack of time, exactly.
Yeah.
All my siblings play video games, and they're so good at it as well, and it's kind of like the barrier is set so high. But maybe I should get one so I can just like practice and then like blow all their minds. With how cool so I played Final Fantasy.
Yes. Oh,
good t-shirt.
Hype.
Again, beautiful worlds and like kind of great storytelling, and a bit of Assassin's Creed as well, and Morrowind.
Yes.
So I do kind of like the visual narrative type games. Are always really fun.
Yeah, there's an amazing game, and it's super hard to get hold of because it was like one of those really old school JRPGs called Xenogears, which came out when I was like 15, 16.
Uh-huh.
And it was still Squaresoft at the time, so like way back way back when. Way back when. But the whole premise is of killing gods.
Oh, cool.
And it's so good. So if you ever get like, you'd have to get like a JAT PlayStation 1 so you can play it, because it never like properly came out here. But there were bits I was reading of this that were just making me think of like 16-year-old me, like trying to kill these gods. So definitely try and find it if you can find it for a reasonable price. That is. That's true. But that's a whole other conversation.
When I finish book 2, then we'll talk.
Take some. You authors never get downtime, so.
No. Always writing. And if you're not writing, you're thinking about writing. If you're not thinking about writing, you're crying about not writing.
Or drinking.
Or drinking while talking about writing.
Yes. There you go.
Or we're reading, obviously.
Yes, of course. Well, I suppose we can't be mad at you spending too much time writing. Come on. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
To talk about Godkiller. Obviously, we've got like signed copies winging their ways to people like after this, which is going to be fantastic. And whenever you're next around, come see us.
Yes, please. Yeah, that'd be great.
Brilliant. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. And be back soon. Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.